Finishing, made sense of. Did a fair outcome get given? Upon his capture, Dahmer admits to every one of his violations and really gets life detainment. Lionel is crushed, however invites benefiting from the entire situation by working a book and bringing in cash out of it. Inside the jail, Dahmer begins to get letters and cash from individuals who love him as a legend of some sort or another and are attracted to his obscurity. Dahmer transforming into this sort of religion and nearly big name upsets the casualties' families as well as the dark detainees of the jail. He gets wounded by one of those detainees, however before long recuperates. Dahmer chooses to go through immersion to wash his wrongdoings away and be saved by God, which satisfies Lionel. Eventually, however, Dahmer meets his destruction when he is cudgeled to death by prisoner Christopher Scarver. After the demise of Dahmer, Lionel and Joyce get into a fight in court about whether to save his cerebrum for additional examination and exploration or to obliterate it. The decision goes in support of Lionel, and to respect Dahmer's desire, it gets annihilated. Glenda pushes for a recreation area in the site of the now obliterated Oxford condo in memory of the person in question, and she pronounces that she will sit tight however long she is relaxing. In any case, it is uncovered in the end credits that no park or remembrance was at any point underlying that area. The greatest inquiry that surfaces here is, was a fair outcome truly given? Taking into account Dahmer got captured and wound up in prison, in more extensive terms it was. In any case, how much unending agony and experiencing the groups of the casualties needed to go through demonstrates in any case. As a result of Dahmer, individuals in the Oxford condo were perpetually damaged and they in the end needed to move. Glenda needed to live with the recollections of the terrible stench from Dahmer's loft and furthermore not having the option to save the 14-year-old kid from the beast regardless of making an honest effort. Indeed, even after all that he did, Dahmer actually got rather fair treatment from the police and authority in light of being a white male, while a considerable lot of the casualty families were irritated and pestered because of their skin tone. However, getting severely killed in the hand of Scarver, a veritable God-devotee person of color, appears to be a type of fitting retribution. For the casualties' families, realizing Dahmer isn't taking on the planet they are living in is an enormous help, all things considered. The Jeffrey Dahmer Story, 2022, Netflix miniseries audit. One of the most serious issues with most chronic executioner films/shows is the sad glorification of the questionable person and legitimization of their activity. In that specific situation, this miniseries ends up being a disclosure, as it won't give the lead character any sort of cool scene or snappy exchange. It strips him of any sort of marvelousness and presents Dahmer as a person who is being analyzed for his activity. What compels this series far better is the manner by which it really turns into the narrative of the people in question and Glenda, who arises as the genuine legend of the story, who is truly attempting to save individuals from Dahmer. This is additionally settled by presenting Glenda's personality before Dahmer in the primary episode and finishing the last episode with her too. In one of the episodes, the existence of Tony Huggs is investigated right from his introduction to the world to ultimately becoming one of his casualties. This is a brilliant approach to narrating and an obvious sign of who ought to be felt for. Basic reaction. Dahmer, Beast, the Jeffrey Dahmer story got blended surveys from pundits, who commended Peter's presentation, yet condemned the irregularities and overperformed tones, referring to the show as one more feature of Dahmer and his killing spree. Citation needed. The survey aggregator site Spoiled Tomatoes revealed a 53% endorsement rating with a typical rating of June 10th, in view of 17 pundit audits. The site's fault-finders agreement peruses, while Beast is apparently mindful of the danger in praising Jeffrey Dahmer, designer Ryan Murphy's licentious style by and by slants this shocking tale into the domain of nauseous exploitation. 8. Metacritic, which utilizes a weighted normal, doled out a score of 45 out of 100 in view of 8 pundits, designating the blended or normal reviews. 9. Kayla Cobb at Decider said the show isn't simply very much coordinated, composed, and acted. It's revamping what a wrongdoing show can resemble in the event that we quit commending killers and begin zeroing in more on methodical failures. 10. Caroline Framkov assortment contends that the show essentially can't ascend to its own desire of making sense of both the man and the cultural imbalances his violations took advantage of without becoming shifty in and of itself. 11. Dan Feinberg of The Hollywood Journalist acclaims episode 6, Quieted, as effectively the best episode of the series, an awkwardly sweet and miserable hour of television that presumably ought to have been the layout for the whole show, and, in putting a dark, hard of hearing, gay person at the focal point of the story, the series is giving voice to someone whose voice has too much of the time been rejected from ogling chronic executioner portraits. It is 1991, and in the Oxford apartment complex in Milwaukee, the occupant of 212 Glenda Cleveland, Emmy Victor Niecy Nash, is profoundly worried about the dubious exercises of her nearby neighbor Jeffrey Dahmer. Looking from the peephole of her entryway, Glenda sees Dahmer coming to his condo with a youthful African-American man. We see him strolling into a gay bar and getting the man named Tracy Edwards, Sean J. Brown, with the commitment of paying him cash in return for his photos being clicked. Tracy goes to Dahmer's loft and before long finds his actual evil expectation. He actually figures out how to track down a valuable chance to overwhelm Dahmer and escape. Frightened and restless, Tracy goes over cops John Balserzak, Scott Michael Morgan, and Joseph T. Gabrish, Matthew Allen, and drives them to Dahmer's condo. This in the long run brings about Dahmer's capture and the police finding further upsetting things like human remaining parts, a few heads in the cooler, 2 skulls, and a gigantic drum containing various bodies decaying and corrosive. We get a top at Dahmer's odd youth in Ohio and the useless relationship he imparts to his folks Lionel, Josh Broden, and Joyce, Savannah Brown. He is totally separated from his medication junkie mother, and the main dad-child holding is by all accounts analyzing street kills together. His folks before long get separated and Dahmer is left totally alone for a mid-year in 1978 when he carries out his most memorable homicide by baiting a drifter with the commitment of a couple of brews. The homicide is trailed by Dahmer dissecting the body, dissolving the tissue in corrosive, and smashing the bones with a demo hammer. Lionel, Richard Jenkins, playing a more seasoned variant, ultimately returns into Dahmer's existence with Sherry, Molly Ringwald, who later turns into his stepmother. He enlists his child at Ohio State College with at least some expectations of a more practical future, and when Dahmer winds up getting removed from the school, he is shipped off the military. After 2 years, being in the military additionally doesn't turn out for Dahmer, and neither does living in Miami, as he can't bear being distant from everyone else. He returns to Ohio and ultimately moves to West Allis, Wisconsin with his grandma. Nonetheless, he keeps on welcoming difficulty by uncovering himself out in the open at a state fair and thus losing his employment as a phlebotomist. His relationship with his grandma is likewise made unpleasant when she tracks down a male life-sized model in his bed and acknowledges he is involving it for sexual purposes. He views as another leisure activity in sedating gay men and turns out to be prohibited from the bathhouses when he is gotten. In any case, that doesn't stop him, and he proceeds with his horrible demonstrations in more tasteful lodgings. His persistent dangerous senses drive him to take more resides at his grandma's home, and he disposes of the remaining parts through the misrepresentations of taxidermy. One of the casualties gets inadvertently saved by the unexpected obstruction of his grandma. Dahmer before long gets captured for attacking a 13-year-old kid, however gets out subsequent to spending a year in a restorative office. When requested to move out from his grandma's home, he moves into the scandalous Oxford loft where he kills 12 of his casualties, including the sibling of the kid he had attacked previously.